The Dragonback series by Timothy Zahn. Book 1, Dragon and Thief. Chapter 19.
Jack stopped at one of the dining rooms first, following Uncle Virgil's standard rule that you never went into a job on an empty stomach. He made sure to order far more than he wanted and brought the leftovers back to the stateroom where Dracos would have the privacy he needed. As the dragon attacked the rest of the medium-rare T-bone steak, Jack sat at the writing desk putting together a small but very smelly smoke bomb. It didn't take long. One of his duties for Uncle Virgil had been to create diversions, both for the jobs themselves and also sometimes for when things went suddenly sour and they had to run for their lives. Uncle Virgil had taught him a lot about such things, and Jack had picked up the other bits and pieces from some of Uncle Virgil's friends. Even on a luxury starliner, he'd had no trouble buying or scrounging everything he'd needed. The rest of the preparations didn't take very long either. Soon, much too soon, everything was ready. After that, there was nothing to do but wait.
"You are troubled,"
Dracos said. Jack looked up from the solitaire game he had laid out on the writing desk. Dracos had finished his meal and was lying on his stomach beside the bed, his head laid along his front paws in that dog-like resting pose of his. All the dragon needed, Jack thought, was a roaring fireplace behind him to complete the picture.
"What?" "I said you are troubled,"
Dracos repeated, raising his head to look more closely at Jack.
"Are you concerned about the mission?"
"Maybe a little," Jack said, looking down at his game. He didn't remember this card layout at all. Apparently, he'd been playing on pure autopilot. "No, I think it'll go all right. The people who designed the system couldn't possibly have expected the approach we're going to use. No, it should work."
"Then what is your concern?"
Slowly, Jack began collecting the cards. "I've been thinking," he said. "I'm wondering if maybe we should forget this whole toss the rock in the water thing of yours."
"The koi shike?"
"Yeah, that," Jack said. "Maybe we should just switch the cylinders like they told us to and leave it at that." Dracos's green eyes were glittering.
"Do you suggest we allow them to succeed?"
"Look, Dracos, they're going to succeed no matter what we do," Jack said. "I mean, this is Cornelius Braxton we're talking about. If he wants this cylinder, or if he wants the cylinder's owner out of his way, then sooner or later he's going to do it. And he'll roll over anyone who gets in front of him." He looked away from Dracos's gaze. "Why should that be us?" For a moment, the dragon was silent. Jack shuffled the cards, not daring to look up at him. Once before, he'd wondered what Kada warriors did to someone who disobeyed orders. Now he found himself wondering what they did to deserters.
"Uncle Verge does not think you should follow the Kada warrior ethic,"
Draco said at last. Jack looked up sharply. "What makes you say that?"
"You and he discussed it,"
Draco said.
"in the Vagran spaceport."
Jack made a face. He'd forgotten how good the dragon's ears were. "That was a private conversation, you know."
"My apologies,"
Draco said. He didn't sound all that apologetic.
"The fact remains that Uncle Verge sees all actions and plans of action in terms of whether they will aid you or harm you."
"What's wrong with that?" Jack demanded. "Who else is going to think about what I need?"
"I agree that you should take care of yourself,"
Draco said.
"but there should also be more to guide your decisions and actions than simply your own comfort or safety."
"Let me guess," Jack growled. "Doing for others, the noble cause of good versus evil, sacrificing yourself for a higher purpose. Am I getting warm?"
"You speak with scorn,"
Draco said calmly.
"but you are correct. There are times when each person must choose his path based solely on what he knows to be right."
Jack sniffed. "The Kada warrior ethic."
"It has nothing to do with warriors,"
Draco said.
"nor does it depend on whether you are alone or surrounded by friends and allies. It is a decision of the will, guided by the inner knowledge of right and wrong."
He cocked his head.
Do you still know right and wrong, Jack Morgan?
If we go up against Cornelius Braxton, I'll probably die, Jack said bluntly. Even if I live, I'll go to prison on Vagran for 2 murders I didn't commit. Is that what you want?
If you do not stand against him, the 2 Wistwaki will still be dead,
Dracos reminded him.
And you will have to live with the knowledge that their murderer was not brought to justice. Is that what you want?
I could live with it, Jack said stubbornly. The green eyes continued to bore into him. Jack tried to hold that gaze, but after a few seconds he gave up. No, not really, he conceded.
And you will also know that through their deaths, another person was harmed,
Dracos went on.
The owner of the cylinder you intend to steal.
So what do you want me to do? Jack asked. Throw my life away too? Add one more death to this whole ugly list?
I do not suggest you deliberately sacrifice your life without care,
Dracos said.
That is not the way of a warrior. We will be subtle and quiet and use all the skill and cunning we possess. But the cylinder must be returned to its rightful owner, and that owner warned of the attack against him or her.
Jack shook his head. I already told you, Dracos, we can't fight Cornelius Braxton and win.
Then do not fight him because you expect to win,
Dracos said.
Fight him because it is the right thing to do.
Jack snorted. Like pulling that guy Dumbarton out of the hot dirt on Iota Clestis?
Yes,
Dracos said.
I do not expect any gain from that action, nor do I expect Dumbarton to be grateful if our lives should cross again. I did it because it was right.
Jack looked down at the cards in his hand. Uncle Verge would argue strongly against this, he knew. He would remind Jack that there was no one to look after Jack Morgan but Jack Morgan himself. He would point out that high-level corporate warfare was none of Jack's business, and that the sooner he got himself out of the middle of it, the better. But Uncle Verge wasn't here. Easy for you to say, he muttered. I'm the one with the hot seat. You've got nothing to lose.
On the contrary,
Dracos said.
I have the lives of all my people.
Jack looked up, startled. What?
The man behind the desk in the Advocatus Diable,
Dracos said.
You perhaps did not recognize his voice. It was the same human who led those searching the Haven Seeker.
Jack felt his stomach churn. Yeah, I recognized it too, he admitted. I guess I hoped I was wrong.
It was the same human,
Dracos said firmly.
Thus I face the same decision you do. Do I obey his orders and sacrifice the owner of the cylinder and be free afterward to seek him out? Or do I take my stand here against him and thus risk the lives of all the Kada and Shantine?
Jack sighed. You're not thinking this through, he said. Bad enough when it was just your Valaga and some pirates or mercenaries they picked up along the way. But with Braxton Universis in the game, he shook his head. We can't fight the whole Orion arm, Dracos, he said quietly. I don't know what Braxton has against your people or how he got involved with this, but we can't fight him and whoever else he's got in his pocket and this death weapon. For a moment, the dragon was silent.
If what you say is true, the odds against us are indeed immense,
he said at last.
But again, odds do not alter the rightness or wrongness of a course of action, and I believe we have already determined what the right course of action should be.
Jack smiled wanly. So in other words, you want to take on Braxton Universis, he said. Just you and me.
We must, of course, begin with just you and me,
Dracos agreed.
But that does not mean we will not gather allies of our own once we go. The owner of the cylinder, for one, may be grateful for our assistance.
Jack shook his head again. I can just hear what Uncle Verge would have to say about this.
I can imagine that as well,
Dracos said.
But the question is what you have to say.
Jack sighed. The Orion Arm's a big place, he said. Even Cornelius Braxton must have better things to do than track down some punk-nosed kid who messed up on him. Sure, let's give it a shot. Draco's ducked his head.
I am proud of you, Jack,
he said.
Though you are only a boy, you have the spirit of a Kadar warrior.
Yeah, well, let's hope that spirit doesn't get permanently separated from the rest of me tonight, Jack said sourly, looking at his watch. It's after 11. I guess we'd better start getting ready. The SNA, he knew, would be waiting at the rendezvous point on Aldershot by now. Dimly, he wondered what Uncle Verge would do when he simply vanished.